Greetings, everybody. Welcome to the February 2nd, 2017 episode of Free Webinar Wednesdays. This is Eric Cook, and I'm with WSI Digital Marketing, where we work with businesses and organizations on helping them better understand and leverage the power of the internet as a strategic business tool. You can learn more about us here at WSI online at www.poweredbywsi.com. Unfortunately, my good friend and Free Webinar Wednesday partner and co-founder, Mr. Jeff Simpkins, is unavailable today, so I am going to be flying solo. But if you are a financial institution and interested in all the stuff that Jeff and his company does, I would encourage you to check out communitybankconsulting.com, and he would be more than happy to chat with you, works with organizations on operations reviews and efficiencies and all sorts of other cool stuff. So get a hold of Jeff if you are a bank and in need of those services. So welcome to February 2017. I can't believe January is over already. It seems like it kind of flew by, at least for me. I don't know if it flew by for you, but just returned back from a conference. I'll hesitate by saying in the Keys. So yes, I did have to do a banking conference in Key West. But as we've talked about on Free Webinar Wednesdays before, there was quite a bit of conversation around the whole ADA compliance, and my presentation at this conference was around the Digital Dozen, which kind of supports the book that WSI wrote. We, as agents within the WSI network, collaborated, and I've had the honor and privilege of actually writing chapters for both of our books, the first edition and the second edition. And so during today's Free Webinar Wednesdays, what I want to do is not go through all 12 chapters, but I'm going to share with you how, if you're interested in getting a copy of the book for free, you can do that. You can get it off of Kindle or Amazon. If you're interested in pulling down the chapters individually as PDFs, I'll show you how you can get those. So it's not going to cost you anything to be able to get access to the book. And there's a lot of really cool digital strategies in there. But as I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about today, I had a conversation with somebody in the financial services sector, and had a conversation about a month ago, actually. And as I was kind of thinking about things, and it was a consultant that referred us, we kind of did a little brainstorming when I shared kind of what I thought would be a good strategy for this organization. There seemed to be a level of surprise from a consultant's perspective that worked with the organization and didn't really realize that that was even possible. And so what I want to do today is kind of tell you a story around kind of what this organization was looking for and how leveraging a combination of digital advertising and marketing automation, we're proposing to actually kind of meet the needs of this business. And you know, neither one of these were really on their radar screen. We weren't approached to say, hey, I want to do digital advertising and marketing automation. But they had a need, and these two solutions together, I think, will fix that or address that very easily. So before I get any further, I want to just make mention, and I see some new names in the audience, so certainly thank you for joining. I am aware that the website didn't get updated. I know I said we would see you in a couple of weeks, and with Jeff not able to make it, I didn't have an opportunity to get the post up there. But I appreciate you joining every Wednesday, coming in faithfully. And so today's webinar and all webinars are recorded and made available at freewebinarwednesdays.com. So as soon as this webinar is done, I'll go ahead and get it archived, and we'll put it up on Free Webinar Wednesdays so that you'll have access to it. And also want to mention, if you have a question or need clarification, or maybe you want to kind of dive into a particular area that I mentioned, please feel free to use the chat function. Obviously, if you're attending live, you can do that. If you're listening to this or watching this on a recording, that's not going to be possible. But if you are attending live and you do have a question, please feel free to use the chat, and I'll keep an eye on that and would love to hear from you. So, so this is kind of an abbreviated version of the slide deck that I presented. So it kicked off at the conference with what we refer to as our subway or our roadmap. And I joke about this. This is part of our book called Digital Minds. The joking part about it is when you initially look at this roadmap, it looks very busy. There's a lot of stuff going on here. And my kind of, I guess, story around this is I come from a small town in Michigan. We don't have subways or subway maps. And the first time I was in Chicago, I saw a subway map that looked very similar to this and was pretty intimidated. And I stood there kind of waiting to get a ticket. And fortunately, there was a local Chicago person that came up, and she was very kind and said, "You look really confused." And I said, "Yeah, this is obvious." And she explained kind of the concept around a map like this to say, well, where is it that you are now? Here's where you are. This is the stop that you're at. Where do you want to go? And then you kind of follow the map, and if you need to change trains, it'll show you where that connection is, and those trains overlap. And as long as you make sure you get off on the right train and get back on the other one, you'll easily be able to get where you need to go. And so once I kind of got the feel and that clicked, it's actually pretty easy. And now if I go to Chicago and my wife and I, we can hop on the L and pretty much get anywhere we want to go. To those of you that live in a big city, that is probably not rocket science. And you're probably saying, wow, Eric, that's amazing. You can figure out a subway. But what we did as part of our digital strategy is we try to embrace the same philosophy where no longer does a digital strategy just live by itself. You can't just have a website and not think about how it's going to relate to people that might be visiting on a mobile device, or what that means from a digital advertising perspective. Or if you're doing Facebook, you really need to think about some of these other things that also kind of interact and are complemented by social media. So this subway map, if you will, or our digital roadmap, essentially is our attempt to try to kind of explain where things overlap and connect with one another as they relate to an overall digital strategy. And so in a perfect world, when you're thinking about your digital strategy, and certainly the book is 12 Things Every Business Needs to Know About Digital Marketing, you'll see how each of those elements to a certain extent will complement the other ones. And it doesn't mean you need to invest equally in all of them, because a lot of your strategy is going to depend based off of your customers and your prospects and the products and services that you offer. But as you kind of go down the road and say, okay, now it's time for us to get on social media, or now it's time for us to get a Twitter account, we've been on Facebook, go back and take a look at this strategy map and see, well, where does social media intersect with search engine optimization? Where does it intersect with analytics and your website and mobile visitations? So all those sorts of things. So this is kind of the way that we try to set the stage. Hopefully once you get an idea of the big picture around why we created this, it's not nearly as intimidating. But certainly when I present this and show it up on the screen for the very first time, I oftentimes will see eyeballs in the audience just kind of get really big, like, wow, he expects me to read that. Because I do agree it is a little bit small to read. But when we look at the chapters in the book of the, I call them the Digital Dozen, these are the 12 chapters. Now, I wrote the chapter on mobile, so of course I'm going to say that's the best chapter. In all seriousness, all the chapters are really good. And yes, I have read the book cover to cover, even though I'm a digital marketing consultant and I should know all of this. I actually picked up things from a lot of these chapters that either I forgot about or didn't realize, because it's very difficult to be an expert in all of these areas. And that's one of the cool parts about the WSI network is we have a collection of digital agencies that spans the globe, almost 80 countries, 1,000 independently owned and operated agencies like ours. And those agencies are run by individuals that have experience in certain areas. And I would say, my expertise really revolves around the financial services and the banking space, and kind of looking at that as a strategy to help organizations in that sector really engage in a digital strategy, but understand things like compliance and regulation and privacy and consumer preference and, all those sorts of things. But then we can work together collaboratively within the WSI network and kind of leverage each other's skills on behalf of our customers. And so we WSI corporate tapped people in a variety of different areas, and that's how the Digital Dozen was created the first time, and then it was written again. It's been translated into 3 different languages. Today I'm just going to focus on digital advertising and this concept of marketing automation, and I'm going to explain to you kind of why that's the case. If you're interested in getting access to all of the chapters. Let's say you want to maybe get the chapter specifically on digital advertising. You can visit us at poweredbywsi.com, go to the resources and white papers, and we've got the PDF for every single chapter available. You can also go to Amazon.com and you can just do a search in Amazon Kindle books for digital minds or even just digital marketing. We're one of the top 5 results for just the general term digital marketing. And you'll find our Digital Minds book, and you can go ahead, and it is available as a free download on Amazon Kindle. So if you've got the Kindle app, you can actually pull it down and have it that way. So kind of a cool little Benny there. Whoops, didn't skip over that. So let me define the need. So this organization that we spoke with was experiencing some challenges with growth. They're in a large metropolitan area. They're a little bit smaller service provider, and they don't have a budget like the big boys do in the neighborhood. And so they can't really go toe-to-toe and compete with them from an advertising perspective. They've invested heavily in technology to allow them to do things very efficiently. But what they found, and this is one of the things that the consultant shared, and I suspect some of you that run businesses may also be in the same boat, is what they found was when they did an analysis of their customer base, there was a good deal of customers that only had like a single relationship with this institution. And so because they only had one relationship, it was kind of causing them some challenges from a profitability perspective. If you think about it like from a bank's perspective, if all that we have is a savings account of yours, and you as the customer have your mortgage someplace else, you've got a checking account someplace else, you've got your investment someplace else, or maybe a money market or certificate of deposit. If you've got all those other relationships someplace other than at my bank or my financial institution, I would really like to have all of those under one roof because I can provide economies of scale. It adds additional profit. I know I'll keep you longer as a customer of my institution because the more products and the relationships we have together, the longer that relationship's going to last. And so as we were talking about what the needs of this institution were, it was really trying to figure out how we could go and increase what we oftentimes refer to as the wallet share. If you think of in the banking industry, you've got a wallet that has money, and we want as much of that money that you own as a customer under our roof, so we can take care of it. It's convenient for you because you can transfer money between places, you can show up and talk to somebody about your deposit account, get into your safety deposit, visit with a mortgage loan officer, maybe schedule an appointment with somebody in the investments area. But regardless of whether or not you are in the banking industry, think about your own particular industry. Maybe you're an attorney, maybe somebody came to you to do up a contract, but could you help them do a power of attorney? Could you help them with a will? Could you help them create a trust? And if those are services that you offer, but people are going elsewhere, it makes sense for you to proactively reach out to them and try to encourage them to do more business with you. And while that may be an uncomfortable scenario for some people, because not a lot of people like to do the sales thing and asking for business because you've got that fear of rejection. Well, what if I ask them to do this and they tell me no? Or what if they ask questions and I don't know what a power of attorney is? So you've got some education and some awareness, but the reality is most people have never been asked to say, hey, I noticed we've got your checking account, but where's your savings account at? Who do you use for online banking? And so if you ask nicely and politely, they may not necessarily come over to you right away, but what you might find is you'll at least get on their radar screen. You'll at least get them interested in the fact that you offer those additional services. And when the time comes down the road, I really haven't started thinking much about retirement yet, but you know what, when I do, I'll come back to you. And then they might read an article in the Wall Street Journal about the benefits of a Roth IRA. And then they're going to think of you because you put that bug in their ear and say, you know what, maybe I need to go back to Eric and talk to him about that. Maybe I need to look at a trust. Maybe I need to look at, whatever else it is that you provide. And so if you're not comfortable with that, there are ways that you can leverage technology to help kind of get your message out in front of people and not necessarily feel like you're going after all sorts of new people. Because to grow a business, you can either grow it what sometimes we refer to as organically, where you're growing more of the business from the customers that you already have. Kind of go back to that wallet share. Or you can go out and you can try to get brand new customers, and that's oftentimes referred to as market share. So a market share increase is typically more difficult because these are brand new people that don't know you. They don't know how awesome a service you provide. They don't have a relationship with you already. They're not using at least one or maybe two other products from you. So getting them to convert to your business or to your service when they don't have anything with you yet is a more difficult challenge. And so I would suspect the majority of you, if you were to take a look at your existing customer base, see how many times people are reordering from you, are there other products and services that you can offer, you will find an untapped, I suspect, gold mine of opportunity by just going back to your existing customers and educating them on what you do, how you offer it, what sorts of things you can take care of, and making sure that they're aware of that. So that's essentially the strategy that we are recommending in this case. And to do that, we're actually going to use digital advertising and marketing automation. Now, when I say digital advertising, a lot of times people think, well, don't you just use that to go out and get brand new customers? If I do a display ad or I do PPC, aren't those just people out there searching for me and looking for the services that I offer? And if I don't have a really big budget like the big boys, it's going to be really hard for me to get noticed. And the short answer to that is yes, but we have the ability, digital advertising capabilities exist where we want to leverage, and maybe some of you have heard of this before, but remarketing or retargeting is what it's called. And so in a digital world, we have the ability, we have the luxury, unlike in traditional advertising where you might be in the newspaper or the radio, you don't have a really good control over where your ad could potentially go. You just kind of go into a network and you don't really know if it works that well. But when we think about digital advertising, whether we call it a prospect because it's somebody that genuinely doesn't have any relationships with us, or we count our existing customers that we want to increase their wallet share as a prospect, because even though they're a customer, we want them to do more business with us. And so by their actions and activities and just general use of the internet, we can fill all of these different columns and use this knowledge as part of our digital advertising effort. So for example, we know when somebody goes online to Google or Bing and they type something into a search engine with pay-per-click advertising, we know what they're looking for. I need a will and estate trust in Indianapolis, or I'm looking for a mortgage loan in Battle Creek, Michigan, or I need automotive care in, Tampa, Florida, whatever the case is. We know what their intent is because they're telling us. We also have the ability through digital to know who they are. So we can get to know our customers a little better. Depending on the level of knowledge that you have within your own system, you can even leverage that data. You can imagine in the financial services industry, if you've ever applied for a mortgage loan, you know that that institution has got an awful lot of data on you. They know how much you got in your checking and savings. They know what your credit card debt is. They know where your insurance policies are. They know what your investments are. Not that we want to spook people out, but there's a lot of that information that we know about customers or that you can data mine through your existing customer database to give you an idea. And then what you want to do is kind of say, well, what does a really good customer look like? And how can we create opportunities to get in front of more of our customers that look like that, but maybe aren't doing all their business with us? So let's use Jeff as an example. Let's say Jeff maybe lives in a particular area and has a particular demographic profile that looks like he would be an attractive customer for a mortgage loan and a checking account and maybe some investments. But if he only has a savings account with us, maybe he's classified as an unprofitable customer relationship for us today, but the likelihood that he's got all these other profitable relationships just at some other service provider is very, very real. And it's now our job to go out and say, well, how can we get our eyeballs or get Jeff's eyeballs to see us more often than the competition. So that's kind of the goal with kind of identifying who they are. We can figure out what they do for a living. You can go certainly do research on LinkedIn and figure out those things. We can do other sorts of ad strategies to figure out what they do either for a living or during the day, what preferences they have for where they're browsing. We can also understand where they're located. So if we want to go after particular individuals, now with mobile devices, actually with GPS capability and geofencing, there's tremendous opportunity for us beyond just relying on the IP address or maybe some geographic terms that somebody types into a search engine. For example, when you look at from a geofencing, and if you're not familiar with that term, you kind of draw a dotted line on a map and put in the latitude and longitude coordinates into what looks like a fence, basically, and say if any mobile device comes into this area, we now want to market to it, or we want to count it, or we want to be able to somehow push a message to it. And so we have the capabilities now in digital advertising where we can say, if somebody sees a banner ad on their mobile device, but then they walk into one of our offices or our restaurant or our store or our service center, we can actually count that as what's known as a conversion. So I'm looking for an automotive shop online, I need to get an oil change, or I want new tires. I find the local discount tire company because I do a Google search or I see their banner ad, and then I'm not going to call them, maybe I would, but I'm not going to visit their website and buy tires online. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say, oh, well, we're over in Battle Creek, I'll just get in my car and drive over there. My device can be identified as being seen or have seen that banner, and when I drive on their lot, if they're geofenced, that can trigger and say, hey, this month, 75 people that saw your ad on a mobile device actually drove to your office or drove to your store and might have very purchased tires from you. So the geo capabilities and the targeting are certainly very, very powerful. Again, might be a little spooky, but they are very powerful. We can see what sort of conversations they're having through social networking, what they're talking about, so we can play a part in those conversations. And then the last thing, and this is where we're going to kind of mention the power as it relates to the situation that I want to talk about today, is remarketing and retargeting and how we can leverage that together with marketing automation. Because in this instance, what we're doing is all of these other things are great and they all matter, but if we're only looking at getting our name in front of people that are already doing business with us now, we don't want to spend advertising budget going after people that are just generically searching for our products and services, because it's going to be very difficult, especially if we're a small player in a big pond, to get seen. But if we restrict our advertising budget to only people that have been to our website or have some other way identified themselves as being interested in what we do, we intentionally ignore all the other opportunities, the shiny objects and the squirrels that are running around, and we only go after the people that have had some exposure to us because they're either coming to our website and they bought something, or they're a customer and they're logging into their account, or they've already inquired about us and they've been exposed to what it is that we do. So that can be leveraged two different ways. And you can take that remarketing capability and represent your banners and represent your ads when those individuals go online and they actually do a search. So pay-per-click is when somebody goes in and they're actually typing into Google mortgage loans Indianapolis, or automotive tires, Battle Creek, Michigan, whatever the case is. Display is really where we're picking the different areas that people are browsing, and we're presenting them with banner ads, whether it's on Facebook or other websites or on mobile devices, even on mobile devices in mobile apps that will support in-app advertising. So if you're a Clash of Clans player or you've got a free version of Solitaire, every once in a while that game is going to stop and it's going to show you an advertisement, and if you click on it, it's going to make some money for the advertiser, and if you don't, you just move on. But a lot of games that are free are either supported by in-app purchases or advertising or both. And so banner ads can actually be displayed directly on those mobile devices as well. There's other ways from an advertising perspective that once we know that somebody is out there that's seen, we can do what Chase Bank is doing, and we can present them with a variety of options. Now Chase, really pulls no punches in the fact that it really wants its credit cards out there. So you can see 2 of the 4 ads that are here talk about their credit card program, but they also are looking to acquire checking accounts and mortgage loans as well. So you can use these different extensions to be able to promote other services even from the same advertisement. And when we talk about display, this is just a sampling of all of the different networks that we can participate in that offer us the ability to be able to share your information with people in a variety of different areas, whether it's websites, YouTube, Facebook, social media, mobile apps, etc., you name it. So there's certainly no shortage with where those ads can show up. But by using remarketing, rather than feel like we have to be pushing our ads everywhere, which consumes budget, might not be efficient, and if we're really going after, like in this case, we've got a small number of clients, we know we want to grow their wallet share, we don't have a tremendous budget, so we really just want to push our ads in front of people that already know who we are. We want that, oh, I remember them, or oh yeah, that's my bank. We want to make sure that they understand that we're there for them. Now, they may see the ad and think, wow, that's really cool that my bank is, doing advertising, but they don't necessarily know that you're doing it on a very limited scale and only doing it to people like them, as opposed to covering the entire area, around Lincoln, Nebraska, for example. So if you're not familiar with remarketing, the best way to do it is just go to Amazon and look for a product or a service or do a search, and then leave Amazon and just kind of browse around and see whether that item follows you, and it probably will. But in a nutshell, what happens is somebody visits your website, and they either go to the website generically and they get tagged because anybody that visits the website we want to remarket to, or what you can do is you can actually put special code on only particular pages. So if you're really interested, again, using my banking example, if you're really interested in only retargeting people that are interested in getting a home loan, you probably don't want to put your tracking code on your mobile banking or your online banking page, because you'll represent your advertisement to them, but they may not be interested in a mortgage loan. They might be, but if they didn't look at the mortgage information on your website, they probably aren't interested in that product or service, and you might want to remarket to them something other electronic that they might want to use. So the site places a cookie, if you will, in their browser that then stays there unless they clear their cookies or they have them disabled, which few people do. And that kind of follows them. So then they leave your website and they go browse around the internet. They go on Facebook, they go check the news, they hop on CNN, they get in their mobile device, play some games, whatever the case is. But now what happens is that increases the likelihood that your advertisement is now going to be shown, because your ad is going to go into all these different networks, but it's going to be very restricted, and it's going to say, only show this ad when a remarketing cookie is present, because we only want to show our advertisements to people that have already been familiar with us. We don't have the time or the budget to try to convince somebody to switch service providers, and depending on your industry, it may be a really difficult thing to get somebody to completely switch from one service to another. Even though you might be better, switching accounts, switching whatever sorts of services that you offer might be super, super difficult. And so if we go and say, well, at least we're going to show our ad to the people that are doing some sort of business with us, it's going to make it a whole lot easier. And so when that ad gets shown, it hopefully gets them to come back to your website. So they're going to say, oh yeah, I guess or they were looking at mortgage information, they got sidetracked, and then this is just a gentle reminder to come back and look at that information on your website. And that will happen, and whether you work with WSI or your agency that you have now, or you try it yourself, there's going to be at some point a tipping point where you want to be careful that you don't become, and I oftentimes refer to it as the overly attached girlfriend. There's a series of pretty funny YouTube videos that play off of that, because you can turn remarketing into something really creepy, where you just show up everywhere, and now it seems like you're stalking the customer, and that's definitely not what you want. So there needs to be kind of a touch point, because once you get beyond the point of being informational and, hey, we're just trying to stay top of mind, to kind of being a little bit on the creepy side, you're actually going to do your brand more damage than good. So make sure that you kind of pay attention to that, have some discussions with whoever it is that you choose to run those services, because that's where you definitely don't want to go over that tipping point and come across being like you're a little bit too pushy. The concept around that is one that I think people are familiar with. I think everybody's been remarketed to on Amazon. Prior to the holidays, I was making recommendations to friends that, if you've got one computer in the house and you go to Amazon and that's how you're doing your shopping, you want to make sure that you either use an incognito browser or clear your cookies, because as soon as the kids get on that computer and they start browsing around, they're going to see remarketing ads to all the toys and presents that you've been shopping for, because Amazon's going to remarket those. And they may not be as surprised when, they open their presents underneath the tree. So Amazon can kind of spoil the surprise there. So the concept around remarketing and digital advertising, I think, is pretty familiar to folks. But when we get into marketing automation, this is an area, particularly in the banking space, even though marketing automation or business automation or online CRM, it's been around for a few years now. It's one that we're just now starting to see our clients actually expressing some interest in. And so what really marketing automation does is it takes kind of your technology and delivers it through multiple channels. The automation component of it is to say, okay, if somebody is interested in a mortgage, or if somebody is interested in buying tires, or if somebody is interested in getting a trust created, thinking about that process and that conversation that we have with that prospect as to what information do they want to see. If I'm buying tires, it might be nice to get a helpful little downloadable guide on the differences between tires and tread wear and all the other different things that relate into a tire purchase, or what the difference is between a power of attorney and a trust and a will and why they're different. So you kind of have to think about the content that you're going to deliver as part of that automation process, but then it gives you the ability through your online efforts to segment those people that visit your site. So going back to banking, there will be some clients that will be interested in getting a mortgage and financing a house. There will be some that might be just interested in online banking. You'll have some that will be interested in small business services because maybe they run a business. And they might be interested in small business services and mortgage loans, but maybe they don't really like technology, so you don't want to segment them in the technology bucket, but they might be in the market to buy a new house, and they're also interested in business banking solutions. So making sure that you're communicating people with the right message, or to people with the right message at the right time, certainly is important. And so through the marketing automation process, you can actually identify that touch point, and this is kind of an example that we use where somebody, and in this instance, this institution has a pretty good number of their checking account customers and other customers' email addresses. They've done a good job of collecting those at the time the account has been opened. So what happens is the organization can send out an email, and that email comes out of the marketing automation system. And some of you are familiar with services like Constant Contact and MailChimp and others. But a marketing automation system tracks not just the email side of things as like open rates and click-through rates and those sorts of unsubscribes, but a marketing automation system also puts tracking code directly on your website. So let's say I use my example, and I'm going to pick on Jeff again. Let's say I send Jeff an email. I have his email address, but I know he's got other relationships with me. If I send Jeff an email just to kind of as a gentle, hey, we're in the process of updating our records. We'd really love to do more for you as a customer. As part of our process, we're allowing you to tell us what more information you'd like to learn about. You don't want to come across and say, what other stuff can we sell you? But tell us what you're interested in. What are your pain points? What is it that you want to know? What are your goals? Somehow get them to come back to your website. Because if you can do that, I now can go and I can say, I sent an email to Jeff. Jeff opened that email on his MacBook computer and visited my website. I can now, even though that's not part of an advertisement, I can now identify his computer. I can identify his identity in marketing automation as Jeff Simpkins, but I can also place a tracking pixel from an advertising perspective, and now he is part of my remarketing campaign. So not only does Jeff now have the opportunity to see these reminder messages and advertisements that are out there that I'm pushing towards only those that are already doing business with me. But because Jeff opened the email from my marketing automation system, I now have the ability to know that if Jeff does click on one of those banner ads, it comes back. I now know that it really is Jeff, because I've been able to identify his computer or his iPhone or his tablet as part of something that is Jeff Simpkins. And that, my friends, is where the power of automation and marketing automation comes to play, because now we're able to see the businesses, the individuals, and then we can run reports off of that and say, okay, well, let's take a look at all of the customers that we know have the potential to be profitable, but aren't profitable, that have opened an email. And then what happens is I can go in and I can see how Jeff is engaged with me over the lifetime of that relationship. So I can see how many pages has he visited, how many emails has he opened. And so this workflow essentially allows us, when we go back to what is the information that we want to send, this email might go the first time and say, you can, look for a particular product and service. And if they look for that, it can trigger a follow-up informational letter just to, hey, we know that he's looking at XYZ, so we're going to send him another automated email. If he visits the website, we can send him something else if we want. We can send him a note and tell him, hey, we just wrote a cool new blog post on whatever the case might be that might be related to what he's interested in. And if he does read the blog post, we can trigger a notification that sends a message to whoever his relationship manager is in the bank, or whoever his account manager is, or whatever the attorney is that's been assigned to his account. So all of these can have. It does take a little bit of time, I will admit, to work through and figure out, okay, what is the process that we want to go through when somebody opens an email, because a lot of us don't think that far ahead. We think, well, we're going to send an email, we hope it gets opened, and when the email gets opened, hopefully their email is back. Now we have the ability to automatically do other sorts of things directly as part of this. And the cool part is, this happens whether you're in the office or not. So you don't have to be the one that remembers to send the follow-up email. You build the workflow, and then it essentially does its job until the person has either done what you want them to do and they open up an account and start more, or they unsubscribe and they say, you know what, just leave me alone, I'm not interested. And that's going to happen as well. So, there's no harm in that. But this kind of gives you an example of the timeline. So using a banking example, we could have 4 different people that are interested in 4 different things. So Lewis up at the top might be somebody from XTO Energy that's interested in getting a business loan. And so the platforms that are out there, this is an example screenshot from a system that we use called ChartSpring. But the system will go ahead and it'll track, how many times an email is sent, when they came back and visited the website, if they opened the email and did anything, if they filled out a form, if they downloaded a white paper or a PDF. All this information comes back to you. We've got this installed here at our office. This ChartSpring system also integrates with the G Suite email platform. Out of the G Suite program. So whether you're using Outlook or Exchange, you can integrate it with that. So the people that are managing those relationships can go in and they can say, well, it looks like I've sent Chris several email messages, and now all of a sudden, right here, Chris is coming back to my website and he's browsing, he's looking at all these different pages, boom, boom, boom. I sent him another email at a Gmail just to touch base, boom, boom, boom. He comes back, he's reading all my messages. I sent, so now you can kind of get an idea. And mentioning the creepy girlfriend, we don't want to go to that extent. But the next time I have a conversation with Chris, I won't come up and say, hey, I see you've been looking at my website quite a bit. Do you think maybe it's time for us to maybe move forward on that retirement plan that we've been talking about? But what I do know is he's been doing a lot of research. He's been thinking about it. I may want to gently work that into the conversation, or I might want to beef up on my knowledge if there's been any changes in retirement planning. Did the laws update in 2017 as it relates to retirement planning? Did the contribution limits for Roth IRAs change? So that if he happens to ask me a question, he's been doing a lot of research. He might ask and say, I've been kicking on your website quite a bit. I'm thinking we're probably ready to do this retirement plan thing, but I got a couple of other questions for you. That is not going to come out of the blue to you. That's not going to be a total surprise. You're going to be prepared. You're going to be ready for that conversation because you've got the back end knowledge that he's been looking around, and you can be prepared for that. Granted, if you weren't, you would say, well, I'm not really sure. Let me check into that. But then that delays the process. It'd be nice to know before you have that conversation kind of the lay of the land. So marketing automation gives you that capability, which is just so unbelievably powerful. And I will tell you, when I share that kind of capability with folks, most of the time the eyeballs get really big and they're, why I had no idea that was even possible. So as long as we use our powers for good and not evil, which is important, that can give you and your business some really cool intelligence to be able to take those opportunities and to hopefully turn them into new business relationships moving down the road. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Using a digital marketing strategy, placing advertisements in front of people that are already doing business or have responded to a marketing automation or opened an email, visited the website, that's going to give us a much, much greater chance of being successful, not feeling like we have to spend thousands and thousands of dollars to compete against the big boys. So this is very much a David versus a Goliath kind of ad strategy. But when you think about, maybe being a small and nimble organization and going after that wallet share and making sure that you're doing as much for your existing customers as you can possibly do for them, you can combine digital advertising and marketing automation with some email and some other creative strategies to really make it look like you're everywhere. But the reality is you're just where your most important opportunities are, and that's your existing customers. So here's a quick little shortened link to the book that you can use also to get to the Kindle download for Amazon. So you can use that bit.ly WSI book 2, and that will take you directly to the Amazon store as well, and you'll be able to pull that down. So that essentially for me is, I'll say that's about it. So I will entertain, if there's any questions, comments, thoughts, feel free to go ahead and toss those into the chat area. Yeah, so over time, what I'm thinking about doing here on Free Webinar Wednesdays is, still bringing in great guests and having kind of additional speakers coming in, but I'm realizing that there's still an awful lot of unknown as it relates to the world of digital. To most people that don't do this on a day in and day out basis, it's still very much a black box. And while I certainly would love the opportunity to work with you, these are not intended to be sales pitches. These technologies exist with any digital agency if they know what they're doing. But hopefully through some of what we're sharing, it'll make you kind of an educated consumer. It's much like going to buy a car. Most of us like to know what the holdback and the dealer price versus sticker is, so we can go in and we can be prepared and ask the right questions. So hopefully this has given you at least some good questions to ask and built at least some awareness in how you might be able to go out and to grow your business. So looks like the question and answer box is empty, so I won't drag this out anymore. I will tell you, and I will make an official post, I will be on vacation next week, and Jeff has already indicated he's got another conflict, so we will not have Free Webinar Wednesdays next week. And so we will cancel that show, but I will put something up for our next show coming up in mid-February. So if you are watching live, you can go ahead and cross that off, or you can hop on Free Webinar Wednesdays and check out some of our older videos and kind of catch up on maybe if you missed a show in the past. But other than that, there's how to get a hold of me. If I can be of service or answer any other questions, or you'd like to have a one-on-one, please feel free to hit me up. Otherwise, enjoy the next couple of weeks. Thanks for being part of the Free Webinar Wednesday family, and we'll be seeing you online. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.